And we apologize for that. We apologize for that technical difficulty. We got it ironed out.
I think it was a metal plate in my head.
It could have been. It could have been. Gremlins, maybe. Could have been the fire pump. I don't know who's going to take the blame. We're past our halfway point. I want to give a shout out to Key Hose. That's keyfire.com. A very easy endorsement for me. That's what my department has been using for about the last 10 years to keep combat ready. We talked a little bit about standpipes here. When you're operating the standpipe, you definitely need hose. It's going to give you optimum flow, minimum friction loss, and maximum kink resistance. You can't do better than Key. My department right now is trying the 2-inch hose with the 2.5-inch couplings. We like what we see. My company has been had it for years, but now department-wide, we like what we see. We're getting flows of 250 gallons a minute at a friction loss of 25 per 100 feet, and that's at with an 1.125 tip at 45 pounds nozzle pressure. Julio, if you would, we're going to go back to the old school water motor gong.
We actually have to physically take the face off.
Okay. All right.
Typically, we'll leave one bolt in, slide it, open it, and we can put our hand inside, unlatch it, pull it down. We have basically a tire iron, and we reset the valve, right, and close it back up, drain the water, put the air back on, watch that differential, and then put it back into it.
So in my district, where I just left, we have a lot of cold storage warehouses. So in the heated area, we have the dry pipe valve, and there's an air compressor, right? And it is acting upon the air in the system, no water. Air in the system is acting upon that clapper to hold it down. And because of the differential here, you've got
110 pounds.
110 pounds of water, but 45 pounds of air. But the surface area of the clapper is bigger.
Correct.
Dry pipe valve. Now we're going to get into some exotics here. What do we have here, Mr.
It's a single interlocking reaction system. What we normally would see this as in a computer room. We would prefer the one to the left, which is a double interlocking reaction system. The difference is upon release of air, water enters the system, air holds the water back to a certain location. Obviously, we all know that a single head, when it pops, air comes out of that particular sprinkler head, and then the water eventually gets to the head. We like the double interlocking a whole lot better because essentially it needs both forms of detection before the water fills. There's a little bit of a delay, but in that type of application, it's typically a secondary type of system, right? That if you're putting this in a computer room, you're going to have a gas system. That gas system, if the door were open, the gas were to deplete, the fire would regenerate, the water sprinkler system would come into effect.
With this type of system, this pre-action, I'm driving a forklift and I'm not real good at it, and I hit an in-rack sprinkler. With this type of system, will water flow?
If upon release of air, absolutely, water flows.
Okay.
Yep, in a single interlocking.
In the single interlock.
Correct.
Now, how about
double interlocking? Both forms of detection have to go off before water is released.
okay?
We've added the valves above the deluge valve just simply because we want to do full-scale trip tests these days. So this is a newer way of doing it. So we're actually tripping the system.
But it's not a deluge system, but there's a deluge valve.
Correct. So deluge means open nozzles. These are closed head systems, both single and double interlocking.
Okay. All right.
And what we've been able to acquire is cutouts. And I think that that's critical. If I can follow the water and have someone describe to me the path and flow of water, then I can understand what's inside.
Yes. Yeah. I know that when you came here, that's what you did. When you first looked at this, the system, you said, well, let's follow the water.
Correct.
Speaking of cutouts, well, I guess we'll come to the hydrant after we finish up the systems.
And so this is a really neat system to me because this is essentially on-off fire protection. So this is a fire cycle system, proprietary detector. Detector activates the system upon discharge of the fire sprinkler system. And the area cools, and the detector actually allows the solenoid valves, one to open, one to close, and reverse operation, and it shuts itself off. This system's reset without ever closing the control valve. Really, really neat. So there's several different applications for this.
Without any human intervention.
Without any human
It'll
intervention.
turn itself on and turn itself off. Oh, excellent.
Really, really neat. And then the new Tech controller, which is pretty cool.
Now, this baby right here.
We've got a different configuration. So we're using the tanks, the holding tanks as our water supply. Gravity fed, comes into the diesel fire pump. We've got two different applications to test the fire pump. Got a flow meter, so we're able to recirculate the water. We're waiting for programming, so this is a digital flow meter. It's reading in GPM and should graphic enough onto the controller. We literally just got the program, and we're making the connection, so we should be able to actually see the pump curve on the controller. That's pretty neat. That's state of the art. That's brand new. And the second way that we're able to test the fire pump is essentially through the tests that are back up to the holding tanks. So basically open up the reservoir and put our flow meters directly on with the nozzles. We're flowing the water back into the tank. We were doing some of that this week, and we were doing some fire pump testing.
Okay. Let's take a look at this hydrant for a minute. Good. Now this is your traffic flange, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if I'm not a good forklift driver, I'm not a good driver at all. So this time I hit the hydrant. So instead of killing myself, you have a sacrificial flanger.
Correct.
Okay. But not only that, but it releases it in the stem
Inside, right.
as well. And in cold weather climates, this is very important. This is the drain. So when we close the hydrant, we open the drain. So right now the drain is open.
Correct.
And I remember, because I was a firefighter up north, muscle memory, my handle to the 2.5 caps. Feel that suction right in the drain. Can we flow a couple of heads?
Let's do that.
All right.
So what we see out here is we've created a test bench. And that test bench, why don't you go out there so you can see them. And we're using solenoids outside of their listing. So we've got 24-volt solenoid valves basically attached to a water supply on the discharge side of the fire pump. And then we're activating sprinkler heads to show different spray patterns with 8 different types of heads. We've got the number 1 valve is all the way to your left. We're simulating a quick response 5.6 pendant sprinkler head. The second is an upright, same K factor. Then we use a 5.6 horizontal sidewall. We show you a 4.0 horizontal sidewall, 4.9 a residentially listed sprinkler head, just showing the different spray patterns. The next head is a K25, it's an ESFR sprinkler head in the upright position. The K17, which would be your next sprinkler head, that solenoid valve's dripping a little bit. We're using it outside of its application. And then the last head is an ESFR, what is it, a 28. So that's the big daddy.
The ESFRs, now if I remember right, that was the one you were telling me that in the proper application and design, you can use those overhead in lieu of in-rack sprinklers?
Absolutely.
Okay.
They're specifically listed heads and eliminating the liability of in-rack fire sprinklers. You keep talking about the forklift, and that's exactly what happens. They hit the heads in the.
Yep.
A much better application.
Okay.
So.
My question to you, Sarah, and you can go ahead and go on air, is that we were off for about 4 or 5 minutes. Do we have an additional 4 or 5 minutes, or are we wrapping this up at 2 o'clock?
No, absolutely. You can keep on going.
Okay, so what our target time is going to be about 2:05.
Yep, this sounds great.
Okay, good.
You
Okay.
want to do the honors, or you want me to?
No, I want to show them the solenoid switches. So you've got them all numbered.
Correct. So
And
we're able to have it in line of sight of the valves.
right.
And this is. Go ahead.
Well, you know what I'll do is, do you have a pretty good view from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Why don't you go up there, because it's hard to see the spray pattern.
Okay, I don't want to get you wet,
So
but
go up as close as you can as you feel comfortable.
and
So number
I'll
one.
operate. Okay. Switch. You want to?
Sure. So the number 1 is all the way to the left. Let's go as close as we can without getting wet.
Let me know.
Go for it. Go for it. Go ahead. Fire pump start.
Oh, that was great. Any questions, any comments?
Yeah, what the last 3 seem to have like larger drops of water. Was that just an illusion? And what was the gallonage range?
I didn't hear it.
So is Daryl, those, from what I understand, what I've learned from these fellas is that you have to have larger drops in order to penetrate the thermal,
It's just the way that they spray. So the residentially listed heads wet the walls, right? This specifically sprays down. There's specific application sprinkler head for storage, right? They've got heads that you can store up to 40 feet without in-rack fire protection. They have specific limitations in terms of obstructions, dry areas that are created by bar joists, lights, things of that nature. So
I'm looking at a flow rate here of 166 gallons per
Oh,
minute on
yeah.
one sprinkler
and
head.
I'm not positive that we're even, actually currently illustrating a proper spray distribution. Again, we're using solenoid valves outside their listing. There's a little bit of turbulence that's caused around the sprinkler head. We've actually installed some nipples to the solenoid valve, extending the head farther away from the solenoid valve. But really what we're trying to do is just show the practical application, just for everybody to get a good idea of what the difference between the 8 different sprinkler heads are.
Well, and Daryl, some of that is by design. Well, some of that is by design, Daryl. Some of those storage sprinklers are large drop. And a piece of that is the way they're installed for demonstration purposes. Your discharge pressure is going to be smaller on those larger orifice sprinklers on their setup. And so just by that nature, it's going to be operating at a lower head pressure. If you put both heads at the same pressure, that spray pattern might look slightly more similar. But it's still a great demonstration. There's haven't been there. The droplet size is notably different. You can really see it. There's a lot of water coming out of those last 3.
If I could say this, we're looking at a lot of things that do not have to do with stretching hose line and pouring water on fire. So is this really our job? If you're a fire officer and you don't know fire suppression and detection systems, smoke control systems, at least have a good working knowledge of it, you are not a professional firefighter or fire officer, whether you're volunteer or career. This is our job. There's a huge disconnect between fire prevention personnel and the people riding the apparatus whose lives actually depend upon these systems operating properly. So we got to close that disconnect, and it's people like Sprinklermatic, Mr. Collier, who are doing that. But it's incumbent on us as fire officers, as firefighters, to learn these systems. It's part of our job. Just like EMS is part of our job, this is part of our job. And where do we see the screw-ups? You see the screw-ups with burning up fire pumps and shutting off the wrong valves for a sprinkler system, and people desperately running around looking for the proper valve to shut off and drain a sprinkler system.
And how about a safe environment to ask for help, right? To ask what something is. And that's come full circle. Some of the training that we've done, some of the introductions between our team members and your team members, those people are working independently. So in other words, we're doing a building down in Miami, Smathers, right? The responding fire department, the guy driving the truck knows our superintendent, makes the phone call, independent of the office. They're collaborating. That truck pulls up on site, and they're training. They're going through the stairwells. They're running through the systems. They're more familiar. We're conveying that system to the guy who's going to respond, to the team that's going to respond. And how do I know? I'm seeing the pictures afterwards. And it really is a testament to what you're doing down here and promoting that disconnect and embracing it, right? And this is kind of that learning environment where we can all roll up our sleeves, ask the questions, and make some mistakes, right? That's how I learn.
You know, it's if you have an opportunity, if your department is conducting or mandating that a flow test be conducted at a building, standpipe, sprinkler system, a combination system, and you're not there, at least observing, if not participating by pumping into the fire department connection, you're losing a unique opportunity. When these buildings are under construction and prior to getting that certificate of occupancy, man, I have never run into a construction superintendent or a suppression system contractor that didn't go out of their way to educate us. We have an appreciation for what they do. They have an appreciation for what we do.
Especially with these standpoints. If you're not getting a report at the end of that new project showing the pressures and the testing of those PRVs, you're putting people in harm's way, you know, and we hear these horror stories. And the other elephant in the room is they're not testing them every 5 years. So you're not testing them at the end of construction, and you're not testing them while the building is in service. Somebody eventually is going to get hurt, or one of these valves is not going to work.
Come over here for just a minute, Julio. Can you imagine? This is a PRV, factory set PRV. Water acts upon this piston and pushes down this plunger like this. You have moving parts in here that are immersed in water. Can you imagine if you had a valve on your fire apparatus? The internal components were immersed in water and wasn't flowed in 5 years, 10 years, 15, who knows how long?
Right. Well, that's why we've added the valves above the deluge valve, right? So we can do a full operation of that valve. It needs to open. You have MIC, right? You have corrosion on the inside that can essentially seal that clapper shut.
Well, now, not much to Mr. Dugan's chagrin, Mick is not a disparaging term for a person of Irish descent. Would you explain what MIC, the acronym, is?
Absolutely. Micro-influence corrosion. Micro-influence corrosion is essentially an electrochemical process. You have microbes naturally found in the water. You can't predict where it's going to start. You might have a building that's plagued with corrosion adjacent to a building that's not. It has to do with the pressure, the chemical composition of that water, the organic compounds, and how as those organic compounds fall out of solution, they become food source for these microorganisms. And then you have got aerobic and anaerobic microorganisms. It's a complex process, something that's going on, and we've been plagued with it. I mean, we've had to defend against it and really learn a lot about MIC. All the pipe manufacturers have now set up a process that they're coating the sprinkler systems. We've had some of those coatings in the past that were known contaminants for CPVC. There's this, huge concern about plastic pipe. That was a 10-year ago problem. You know, that as an industry, we've learned to wipe our nose, tie our shoes. They've eliminated that. And some of this hysteria that's entered the market is already been taken care of. But basically, isn't that a funny scenario? Is the fix for the steel was the issue with the plastic. And then now you get these condo builders that want to build these condos in steel sprinkler systems and really don't understand what they're trying to protect themselves against. because the steel was failing.
We're gonna be wrapping this up here. I'm looking at a little bit, be about 2 minutes after 2. Starting with, again, I'm not looking at the lineup of people. So, Clark, any final thoughts? Any comments? Any questions?
I'll tell you what, you guys in Southern Florida are fortunate to have a system like that and have Mr. Collier there. That was absolutely exceptional. I learned something today, and to be able to take young firefighters and young officers to a facility like that and have them put their hands on that equipment and flow that equipment is absolutely exceptional. So my hat's off to you gentlemen and Sprinklermatic University. Thank you for what you're doing for the fire service, sir.
Great, Clark.
And we welcome you. Bring your team. You're more than welcome to come down.
And as you say, we'll buy you a beer, Clark.
We're even out here on Saturdays, you know. The reality is we're just here to learn. We're here to have fun. We invite you down. If you can't come down during the week, come down on a weekend. Kyle did.
Yes,
right?
he did.
Yeah.
Sam Hiddle, any closing thoughts, comments, questions?
No, I'm with Clark. That phenomenal experience. I too learned some things. Definitely one of the things I found interesting was, and I'd like to talk to you about it a little bit more, is the sprinklers were designed to wet the walls. And that's just going to be for heat absorption, I assume.
Actually, one of our topics in our residential class. So, like I said, we're in our infancy. We've created the curriculum. So now once we start to teach that class, we will actually videotape that, and then you'll be able to actually view that online. You can either show up live, or you can actually see that as a resource online. So that's the next step. That's forthcoming here in the very next couple weeks.
So Sam, you don't have to come here. You can sit home like you usually do, eating Cheetos in your underwear, scratching yourself and watching fire videos. Sam, you'll be able to do it with.
We're going to try to do it live. We're going to try to continue this, right, and then do that live. You'll be able to log on and then be able to see the classes that we're doing live. We've got a training room inside, and we can house up to 28 people. We'll do some of the class inside. We'll come out, a practical application, go back in. So it will not be boring. We'll get you out of your seat.
Sam, you didn't think we were going to get through this hangout without me giving you a little zinger.
No, I expect it.
Daryl Liggins, any final closing thoughts, comments?
Well, his online thing kind of proceeded along my question. If someone doesn't have the ability to go to such a facility, or a department can't, put out that kind of money, is there any other online supplement training? Like we have a thing called like Target Solutions, where you can take an exam and kind of test yourself on the system.
That's the plan. We actually have the first class. We already have the quiz, right? And it's a quiz that's designed to pass if you're paying attention. But yes, we'll either do it Facebook Live. We may stream it. We're putting in some video cameras. We're going to try to figure it out. So at first, we'll probably give you a link. We'll do it Facebook Live. You'll be able to watch it, and you'll be able to contact Danny Moran. We've got a training officer. He's City of Fort Lauderdale's training officer. He's on our team, on our staff, and he'll be the one doing the first class.
And Daryl, there is a ton of YouTube videos produced by Sprinklermatic, tons of them. One that we show in our officer development class is one of your fellows that is testing a electric fire pump.
Absolutely.
And going through an examination. But Daryl,
we're going to be creating a catalog of videos that will be accessible to the public, and so one of them will be rebuilding a fire hydrant.
And then the second part, for a department looking to maybe send people out there, where can they find out the cost? Is it a Sprinklermatic website?
We're doing it for free. So we're doing it out of our own pocket. It's for the community. The reality is you'll be able to go to Sprinklermatic University. It's on our website. The classes are already listed. And what we haven't published yet is the schedule. We've just been a little bit busy here the last 30 days. So we're opening up a new office and traveling a little bit. But in the next couple weeks, we'll have that well defined.
Jason, are you still with us? Jason Hobelman?
No, he left.
Mike D, any closing comments, thoughts?
I just think this is great information. I think you have to, if you are an officer or a chief officer, you have to get your people out of the firehouse and go out there and know your systems, know where the shutoffs are. Depending on the size of the sprinkler head, how many gallons of water they're putting out a minute, you got to know which valves you're shutting off. You're shutting off the right ones. You got to know how to drain the system. so you can get the water, especially if you're in a multi-story building on the first or second floor, you got all that water above. You got to make sure you're getting taking care of it. And the other one is you got to know what's happening with your systems and how different things interact. We had a major problem in New York City in our projects with all of these standpipe systems with people urinating in the hallways near the standpipes, and they rotted the pipe out. And the uric acid, and we ended up filling the basement of a building, adjoining building, with water while we were trying to fight a fire on the 12th floor of another building. And they said, why are you pumping all that water into the basement next door? We had to find the post indicator valve and shut down the system and isolate parts of the system. But these things happen. You have to know your systems and have people who know. If you don't train your chauffeurs on what to do, they'll never be able to look around and figure out how they're going to change this and make this work for them.
Follow the water, right? Be able to walk in, put your hand on the fire pump, know why, look at your suction side, look at your discharge side. That's the stuff we'll be teaching.
And Captain Mike, you nailed it. You nailed it when you said the chauffeurs, the driver engineers. Your crew is going to be up in the building. It's going to be those driver engineers that are teaming up, connecting and supplying the fire department connections, and operating the valves, and then going into the pump room to make sure that it's running, that the valves are open, and that it is going to continue to run. In other words, it's cooling itself and water is passing from the packing. So excellent points, Captain Mike. And I have learned a lot about suppressions from you. Not to make your head big, but I have learned a lot from you, Captain Mike.
Look at the size of this. It's not a 4-head, Bill. It's an 8-head.
All right, so we've got Jason's gone. We talked to Clark. We talked to Sam. Dan Shaw, sir, any final thoughts, closing?
Now, I'll just reaffirm what you said, Bill. I mean, a lot of people always view when we talk about fire suppression systems is not really sexy and heroic, like talking about VIS and stretching hose lines. But it is vitally important because, you know, I can just speak from our department, the class stuff we're doing on PRDs and PRVs and educating our people about, you know, can you hit test connections? And, you know, there's a belief that you could without understanding the system. You're not going to be able to, and really understanding fire pumps. I think a lot of people will think that as soon as you hook up to the FDC, you're controlling everything that's happening in that building. So it really is vitally important for us to understand it. And the other side of that is, again, it's not sexy, it's not heroic, but at the end of the day, we're all public servants. And we only do ourselves a favor when we mitigate the biggest emergency for the people we serve. In this case, it might be water damage because it's a sprinkler head or something else. If we have a firm understanding of how that works and we can mitigate that and lessen that damage, it only does us a favor when it comes in the long run with the public we serve. So excellent stuff. I applaud you for having it. It's a fantastic resource, and I would encourage everyone, if you can't get there, get online, look at this, learn this stuff. I mean, this is the heart of the building you're going to go fight fire in. It's best you know how it operates.
Ask some questions. Ask for help. We're here.
Okay, we got, did I miss anybody?
Kyle,
the Red Rocket. Any
Yes,
closing?
sir. Yeah, I just want to reiterate what we just mentioned a second ago. Got to put somebody with the fire department in the fire pump room. Verify if that thing is running. See what those pressures are. Can try to get some idea. Make sure that it's not overheating. That it has the water supply it needs. It's a big unknown variable. It's a fixed speed pump. It's not normally where we operate, but if we're going to interact with that system, we have to kind of have some idea what pressures are going on in there and what's happening. And there'll be more to come on that in the future.
And is the objective is to take control, right? To shut down our pump. So radio back what pressure they should be putting on the fire department.
And we've had this discussion. You know, should we allow the fire pumps to do their job, or should we operate as if the building doesn't have fire pumps? If we have the intentions of operating as if the building doesn't have fire pumps, understand that we may be pumping in some buildings well over 500 gallons a minute.
If you take a look at one of our videos, we're doing an 83-story downtown Miami, and we're running pumper trucks in series, right?
Tandem pumping, and they are using key high-pressure standpipe hose specifically made for supplying fire department connections. So if you have super high rises in your area, something over 50 stories, you need to be looking at, especially if you have single stage pumps on your apparatus. This is why it's so critical. When you do the flow test, for the certificate of occupancy. Take advantage of that unique opportunity. Shut the fire pumps down in the building, pump the FDCs to whatever pressure is necessary to flow at least 500 gallons in a minute at the roof. Now, if it's going to be a 2 standpipe system. It's going to be 500 from one standpipe and 250 from the other. That's going to be 3 of the most hydraulically remote outlets.
Why are the fire departments so scared to pump up these standpipes? I mean, if they're going to break, let them break in a training scenario, not in a fire scenario.
Well, Mr. Collier, you're in the minority because
I understand the liability.
I asked a guy in a 55-story building, the suppression contractor, well, okay, we're going to pump this thing to 375 PSI. What? He says, you'll burst the system. Well, why is there a fire department connection? He says, well, failure of the fire pump is highly unlikely. Highly unlikely? You're on the Atlantic Ocean and the fire pump is 20 feet from sea level. What do you mean highly unlikely? So we're going to call it, say goodbye to everybody.
Can we go out with a bell instead of a bang? Can we do that?
Yes, we can. Yes, we can. We'll go ahead and we're going to ring the old school bell again. And then we're just going to say goodbye to everybody. God bless you, brothers and sisters, and stay safe.